ora, hello, I'm Angela Woodward, down here at the beach in Ōtautahi, Aotearoa, Christchurch, New Zealand. I brought my children down here this morning to celebrate the sunrise over my country on this historic day as the UN treaty banning nuclear weapons enters into force. New Zealand was one of the leading countries that led to this historic moment, along with other Pacific nations that suffered firsthand the devastating impact of nuclear weapons testing and that rallied together to eliminate them once and for all.
My name is Deborah Rosito. I'm the United Nations Ambassador for the Republic of Kiribati, and I'm also the former president of Kiribati. As a young boy, I witnessed with my own eyes the nuclear weapons test carried out on Christmas Island while I was swimming on my home island, 2,000 miles west of Christmas Island. I suddenly saw an enormous flash of light, like nothing I had ever seen before. I thought it could only be an act of God. That was far from true. Nuclear armed states conducted hundreds of nuclear weapons tests throughout the Pacific Islands, experimenting on our bodies, irradiating our lands and seas, and disrupting our cultures as my people continue to suffer from ongoing health and environmental harm. As a college student in Fiji, I joined the protest against the nuclear testing on Mururoa Atoll in French Polynesia. It is for this reason that it is an honor that as the sun rises over my country today, the United Nations Treaty banning these instruments of terror and destruction finally enters into force. Kiribati is proud to be among the very first state parties to the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. May this be the beginning of the end of nuclear weapons, and a happy TPNW Day for all.
Today, please bear with us for one more moment. We're all very used to this from the hundreds of Zoom calls we've had with friends in the meantime. We're hoping to get a heads up very soon.
Is your sound working? So welcome. I hope that the sound is now working. I hope you bear with us with some of our technical glitches already in the beginning, but let's get that out of the way. This is a remarkable day, a historic day, where nuclear weapons that have always been inhumane, always been immoral, are now, 22nd of January 2021, also illegal. And this is of course not the end of our fight. This is basically the beginning of a new push. But on behalf of ICANN and the whole team here, Lucero and I just want to greet you. Welcome to Studio 2221.
Over the next 90 minutes, we're going to be crossing time zones and even time itself to follow as the world marks the entry into force of this historic treaty. We're also going to be honoring the decades of activism and energy that this movement put into making today happen. Of course, as with everything in this campaign, it's a conversation, and we want to hear about your stories and see what you've been doing today. Because campaigners know that there can be glitches sometimes, and there can be a lot of fun and incredible successes, and we want to hear them all. So use #NuclearBan on Twitter, on Instagram. Throw your comments into the little YouTube Live comment function, and share your thoughts. We'll be keeping an eye out.
Yeah, and we're here today live from Iceberg Studios in Geneva. I think that the studio setup looks amazing. And we're really, really excited about that. We're going to have some great guests, some in the studio, some connecting via Zoom. We hope that will work. We'll see. We'll have some incredible performances. We already have some great art that we've had here from a local-based Geneva artist, JP Kalonji. And of course, it is an ICANN event, so we're going to try to have as much fun as we can in this whole event.
Absolutely. But right now, I want to start by connecting the past and the present, because tomorrow is going to mark the 75th anniversary of the first ever UN resolution, which actually focused on the total elimination of nuclear weapons after seeing the horrors these weapons caused in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So it's very fitting that this morning, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres was able to welcome the entry into force of the TPNW with a special message from New York. Let's watch.
I am pleased to recognize today's entry into force of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the first multilateral nuclear disarmament treaty in more than 2 decades. The treaty is an important step towards the goal of a world free of nuclear weapons and a strong demonstration of support for multilateral approaches to nuclear disarmament. I commend the states that have ratified the treaty and welcome the instrumental role of civil society in advancing negotiation and entry into force. The survivors of nuclear explosions and nuclear tests offered tragic testimonies and were a moral force behind the treaty. Entry into force is a tribute to their enduring advocacy. I look forward to carrying out the functions assigned by the treaty, including in preparation for the first meeting of states parties. Nuclear weapons pose growing dangers, and the world needs urgent action to ensure their elimination and prevent the catastrophic human and environmental consequences any use would cause. The elimination of nuclear weapons remains the highest disarmament priority of the United Nations. I call on all states to work together to realize this ambition to advance common security and collective safety.
General Guterres, we're so pleased to have such a great partnership in the United Nations and all of its department. And I now have also the great pleasure to introduce a real superstar who also happens to be one of the first staff members of ICANN Norway. Performing for us from Oslo, please welcome Nosiswe.
So much that we lost, so much that was fought for. Wondered if the cost was worth all that we bore. How to measure the weight of shedding our skin. It's never too late. Live from within, losing our way, feels so damn frightening. When will we see the light on the other end? They'll never give up for free. Gotta fight for the space we need and dance till it all falls down. Where we're going, we don't know, no, we don't know, but we'll get there. Where we're going, we don't know, no, we don't know, but we'll get there. Nowhere to return, don't wanna go back to, no, the way that things were. It's not like we have to. The choice between red, white, and blue to make you think you have a choice at all. Will we push through, or was it all for nothing? Losing our way feels so damn frightening. When will we see the light on the other end? They'll never give up for free. Gotta fight for the space we need and dance till it all falls down. Where we're going, we don't know, no, we don't know, but we'll get there. Where we're going, we don't know, no, we don't know, but we'll get there. We wrung it all out, every last drop, blood, sweat, and tears. Gotta make it stop. We wrung it all out, every last drop, blood, sweat, and tears. Gotta make it stop. Where we're going, we don't know, no, we don't know, but we'll get there. Where we're going, we don't know, no, we don't know, but we'll get there. Where are we going? We don't know, no, we don't know. We don't know, no, we don't know, but we'll get there.
The humanitarian impact of nuclear weapons has really always been at the center of ICAN's core. It's the sort of foundation that we stand on as a campaign. The testimonies, the stories, the expertise of the survivors is what has informed us campaigners all over the world. It's what moves people to act on this issue. And we've been so fortunate to have all of these amazing activists from Hiroshima and Nagasaki with us for so long, to put words to the horrors of nuclear weapons who can tell us really what is at stake in this issue. So we want to start, of course, to talk a little bit more about that and about the survivors and with the survivors. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague Akira Kawasaki in Japan. Akira, take it away.
Hi, Akira from Peaceful Tokyo. Today is really a special day. The treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons finally entered into force. And I'm with Mr. Tanaka, the chair of Nihon Hidankyo, the Confederation of Hibakusha of Japan, and celebrating this moment. And actually we met parliamentarians and government officials of Japan and discussed about Japan joining the treaty. I myself worked with hundreds of Hibakushas over 20 years, but I do remember in late 1990s when I first met you, Tanaka-san, you told us in a public lecture that the very existence of nuclear weapons is a moral decay for the humankind. So Tanaka-san, how do you feel and what is the message to us?
いやもう原爆の被害者として目撃しておりますので、私が見た惨状というのはもう絶対繰り返していけないという思いを持って75年、核兵器廃絶のために頑張ってきましたので、禁止条約ができたということは大変もう嬉しいです。あとは廃絶のためにですね、もう少し頑張っていかなくてはいけないかなというふうに思っています。
So you met with the parliamentarians today. How did you feel today?
いや核兵器をなくすということは政治の問題ですので、やっぱり政治家が国会の中できちんと議論をするということは必要で、ぜひ廃絶禁止条約が批准されるように奮闘してほしいと思います。
Thank you very much, Tanaka-san. Thank you.
Thank you, Akira. Of course, the survivors of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not the only victims of nuclear weapons. Decades of nuclear testing, over 2,000, left a devastating legacy of environmental impacts and long-lasting health consequences for people across many different parts of the world. For that reason, I'm very happy that we can have a statement by our colleague Vanessa Griffin from SEDI. Take it away, Vanessa.
Greetings everyone, I'm Vanessa, I'm from Fiji, and I'm so happy to give you a message this morning from the Pacific Islands on entry into force of the TPNW. It's a very big moment for us, including in the Pacific, where we had so many years of nuclear testing by 3 nuclear armed states who actually tested these weapons in our part of the world. And so after a very long campaign, which we know many others have done all over the world against nuclear weapons, it's particularly important for us to have this treaty, and to have it come into force today is a really wonderful day. So congratulations to all the states and all the campaigners around the world, and I really look forward to all the work we'll do next on actually bringing this treaty into operation and the many good things that it can bring. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. I think it's incredibly important that we recognize that nuclear weapons was not just something that happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but that there's ongoing harm continuously today, and in particularly in these test communities all across the world. So I'm extremely pleased now to welcome our first guest here in the studio, Dr. Helen Durham. She is the Director of International Law and Policy for the ICRC. And a great friend of ICANN, and we're really, really excited to be collaborating so closely with the ICRC for so long. Tell me, why is nuclear weapons an issue for the ICRC?
Well, it's a really important point, and thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. As an organisation that for 150 years has been dedicated to the concept that even wars have limits, this is a really magnificent day. And I think with our brothers and sisters in the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, this is clearly a victory on the side of humanity. And we say that based on evidence, as we had a delegate from the ICRC very, very quickly on the scene in Hiroshima. We've been calling since 1945 for the elimination and prohibition for these incredibly unacceptable weapons. And so today we have a clarity that not only are they morally unacceptable, but they're illegal under international humanitarian law. And as guardians of that area of law, the laws of war, this is a really important point too.
And I think that a lot of people, like myself included, think that during an armed conflict, if there will be the use of nuclear weapons, and we know that the risk of that is not zero, we turn to the ICRC for help. What would the ICRC do if there's a nuclear bomb happening today?
Well, the ICRC has 20,000 colleagues. I have 20,000 colleagues in every war zone in the world. We have medical staff, we had weapon contamination staff, we have those who work on issues such as water sanitation. We couldn't do adequate support. And I think this is a key issue, and I think this shifted in many ways when the ICRC, the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, the UN acknowledged that we could not provide adequate support. We couldn't assist the victims for the range of reasons, the immediate aftermath, but also the longer term contamination, food security, impact on the environment. So suddenly we had to have a debate that was not about the military security, but was about human security. So no, we could not provide adequate support. And that's sobering, and that means we have to work even harder to implement this new treaty.
And that's really what a lot of governments refuse to acknowledge, really, and refuse to talk about, that they really have no possibility to address the consequences. But I also want to turn it over to you personally. You've been part of this process really from almost the beginning. First as part of the Australian Red Cross, of course. How do you feel today when the treaty enters into force personally? And do you have like a favorite moment of this process that you really remember?
Oh, well, I woke up feeling very joyous with hope, knowing we've got a lot of work, knowing that this fits into a wider infrastructure, but we are one step closer to a world of not waking up to under the threat of nuclear war. I have many, many moments, and I think we've had times together in many countries. I think this is the diversity, the excitement of working together across many sectors. But I must admit, it was one of the meetings in Oslo where there was a building where the formal meetings were happening. But across the road, there was a group of people from civil society, and it was cold, it was snowing. And every time a car went past, an ambassador, a diplomat, they held up signs that said, "Thank you. Thank you on behalf of humanity." And to me, that was very exciting. That was joyous. We're dealing with a serious issue, but that showed the human agency. And we have to look and learn from the evidence of the past, care about the present, but also have hope for the future. So that was something that really stayed in my mind, as well as the horror and the heartbreak when you visit Hiroshima and see what happened. So it's that balance between the hope, the energy, and the seriousness of what we're dealing with.
And I think that's something that we all feel very much in this issue, that there's so much joy in the organizing and working, but also so much suffering that we're trying to prevent to try to balance that. Thank you so much, Helen, for being with us here today.
You're so welcome. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Congratulations to you too. And we are looking forward to continue to working with the ICRC, of course. Okay. And I think that throughout these past years, we've been reminded that for something that ICAN has known for quite a long time, that doctors, those that are actually there to protect us. Not only do they treat us when we fall ill, but they warn us of the grave health consequences and are committed to really preventing what they cannot cure. And doctors have always had a very deep understanding of the humanitarian impact of these nuclear weapons, and have for decades spoken out about the need to ban and eliminate nuclear weapons. So it's actually quite logical that doctors were the founding sort of partners of ICAN and the ones that created the campaign. So earlier this morning, the Medical Association for the Prevention of War in Australia celebrated entry into force with a powerful action, and take a look here.
Hi, I'm Marcus. I'm an emergency doctor.
I'm Margie Davis. I'm a GP or family doctor. We're both based here in Melbourne, Australia. We've been here today to celebrate the entry into force of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And it's been a terrific celebration, and it's just wonderful to see all of this hard work by so many people becoming international law, and this will change things in the future. So, Marcus, as an emergency doctor in the middle of a pandemic, what do you see as the parallels between pandemic and nuclear weapons?
There are so many parallels between a pandemic and nuclear weapons. First of all, the absolute indiscriminate chaos that it would cause, not just to people's health, but intergenerationally. We've seen in the pandemic how fragile our health systems are and how they've crumbled around the world. It's really scary. The same thing would happen with nuclear weapons. It would happen at a much faster rate as well. And for this reason, the only real treatment for nuclear weapons is to prevent it from happening, which is where this nuclear ban comes in. To stop it from ever happening, to reduce the risk, and
I think experts have been saying for years that we're at risk of nuclear war, and really prevention is the only thing. And it's time we listen to experts, because we know that low frequency but really catastrophic events can happen. And that's one thing Pat never told us. Prevention is where we need to look.
And so ICAN was founded right here in Melbourne, in Australia. How does it feel to be part of that?
Oh, it's so exciting. And I said before, there are so many people who have contributed to this, but the people who founded it back in Melbourne 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we really miss Bill Williams, but I just take my hat off to everybody around the world who's really made this.
Thank you very much, Australia. And I also just want to take this moment to really send a huge thanks right now to all the doctors and nurses and healthcare workers that work tirelessly all over the world to keep us safe. We are so grateful. And particularly a big thanks to all the doctors in ICAN. I'm now with our second guest, and I want to welcome Dr. John Borry. John, you worked on humanitarian law and disarmament for decades. You've been a diplomat for New Zealand. You worked for the ICRC. You worked for the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research. You even wrote the book on humanitarian disarmament. So welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Bea, and it's fantastic to be here. Kia ora, and if it wasn't this time of COVID, I'd probably get up and give you a big hug right now.
I know, I miss the high fives and all of those things. But tell me, what is a humanitarian perspective on a weapon, and what's the opposite of that?
Well, I mean, you look at nuclear weapons, I mean, for more than 70 years, these weapons were seen in terms of their purported utility. They were talked about as crucial to states and from a state perspective. And really, humanitarian disarmament is about looking at weapons in terms of their consequences and the risks that they pose, and for people in the communities, not just for states. And when you look at nuclear weapons and the impacts that these have had on people in their communities through their use over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but their impact on people's well-being because of testing, people's well-being because of the huge amounts of money that have gone to military-industrial complexes to build these weapons, I think you can build a humanitarian case that they're not necessarily a very good idea for much longer.
So we're sort of trying to shift the narrative around nuclear weapons and trying to have this kind of humanitarian perspective on it. How does that shift happen, and how does that make an impact on the sort of politics?
Well, I mean, these things are a struggle for meaning, and like other weapons, people began to think about nuclear weapons in a different way when new evidence was injected into the debate. We have these very circular discussions about weapons where we justify them on the basis of they're legitimate, they're versatile, and really often the evidence points otherwise. And that was done for landmines, anti-personnel mines, cluster munitions. Now it's been done for nuclear weapons as well.
So you've personally been involved in these conversations. You were part of those kind of very early talks about, maybe a treaty banning nuclear weapons. Was there a moment where you're like, oh, this is really going to work, or this is really has some traction, or this is going to change something, or when did you sort of think that this was going to actually work?
Well, for me, the moment came in 2016, and we'd had the Oslo and Nayarit and Vienna conferences. We'd had a failed NPT review conference, and we were in talks in the UN in Geneva, talking about how to move multilateral disarmament forward. The nuclear armed states hadn't bothered to show up, but some of their allies had. And I just got a sense around the room that there were a lot of states there who we don't normally see, and they were starting to say, we want a negotiation, we want a treaty to prohibit nuclear weapons. So that for me, about May 2016 was the moment.
Yeah, I remember that moment, and we've been, of course, talking for a long time and asking people to do that, and governments have been sort of grumpily. But there was like this kind of, when you pull out a plug in a bathtub, it was just suddenly outpoured of support in 2016. And that was really exciting. So thank you very much for being here, John. I think it's really important that we talk about having this kind of frame of humanitarian consequences when we ask for political change. And I want to actually, just after that moment in May 2016, I want to go now to another one of those special moments in this process. In 2016, at the United Nations First Committee, where Ambassador Sabri Boukaroum, who now is actually the foreign minister of Algeria, a country affected by French nuclear testing, was presiding over the voting. And everyone who's been at the UN really knows these kind of dry, boring meetings. But this meeting was a little bit different. And let's have a look.
The committee will now proceed to take action on draft resolution L41 entitled Taking Forward Multilateral Nuclear Disarmament Negotiations.
The voting machine is unlocked. Delegations are kindly requested to indicate their votes on the board. Will all delegations confirm that their votes are accurately reflected on the board?
The result of the voting is as follows: 123 in favor, 38 against, 16 abstained. Draft resolution L41 is adopted.
This is really one of my favorite moments of this process, among very many other as well. We've had quite a few of these big moments, adoption, negotiations, the Nobel Peace Prize, for example, and we keep seeing this kind of growing support for the treaty until we reach 50 ratifications. So, Celine, tell me a little bit, what is in this treaty actually?
Well, the first remarkable thing is that this treaty is the first globally applicable treaty prohibiting nuclear weapons. There were regional treaties, there were the NPT that kind of controlled it, but this one prohibits about everything about the TPNW, about the nuclear weapons. It prohibits developing them, testing them, producing them, acquiring them, stockpiling them, using them, threatening to use them, but it also threatens to host somebody else's nuclear weapons on your territory or to assist someone in something having to do with nuclear weapons. I think it's quite remarkable how far it goes, and it builds on many years of international humanitarian law that has been developed.
So basically it's quite similar to the bans on biological weapons, the bans on chemical weapons, landmines, cluster munitions, these other disarmament treaties that we've seen. So what's the current level of support for the treaty?
So as of today, we have 86 signatures, and I'm happy to announce that we've just reached 52 ratification today. Woo-hoo! With Cambodia depositing its instrument. Yeah. But I think we have to look at the broader picture, where we know that at least 130 governments supported the treaty, and we know that many of them are working to advance their domestic process to be able to join the TPNW in the weeks, months to come. So.
Absolutely. And another really amazing moment in this campaign, and by amazing I mean incredibly stressful, a bit painful and very pressured, was of course the negotiations of the treaty. And it's really such an honor to have with us live, if everything works, from Costa Rica, the Ambassador Elaine White, who was the president of these negotiations. Ambassador, are you there?
I am here.
I can hear you. Can we get an image as well?
I have my video on.
How are you doing in Costa Rica today?
We are very happy. We are very happy.
Yeah.
Very happy. We have a beautiful day, sunny day, which very much coincides with our mood of hope and joy, the joy that we have.
It's really great. I mean, Ambassador, I personally feel extremely attached to this treaty, but as the president of the negotiation, it must really be like your baby. So how does it feel today, like seeing it enter into force?
I feel a tremendous sense of joy, of accomplishment. But also I feel very close. I feel this sense of solidarity and this sense of historic justice that we were able to achieve for the victims. And I feel tremendous appreciation and admiration for all of you guys, the activists, the experts, all the victims, the Hibakusha, the victims of testings all over the world, all citizens of the world that made this a reality. Because you have taught us such a life lesson. Never stop believing, never stop working, never give up hope. And so I also want to express my admiration to all of you. I love your energy, and this is the price for not giving up and for the strong belief.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about the negotiations, we were doing our work, but it must have been extremely challenging for you. Getting, over 120 governments in the same room, getting them all to agree to one thing. What parts of the negotiations and the treaty were the most challenging? Are there any sort of specific articles or paragraphs that you really feel extra proud that you managed to solve?
Well, of course, the most challenging parts to negotiate were articles, what we call the Articles 2 to 4, which are the ones that establish the pathways for nuclear weapon states to join the treaty and implement their disarmament process while bound by the treaty provisions. Those were difficult to negotiate because they were very intense in knowledge and in technical knowledge, and because we were working on very new grounds. But definitely the part, of course, I absolutely admire the Article 1, the Article on Prohibitions. I like the prohibitions very much. Celine was explaining them very clearly. But I say that the treaty has this, and this is my favorite part, has a very strong normative block with the strong and clear prohibitions. The preamble really makes a very important contribution in consolidating this new paradigm, moving the emphasis of the discussion from the state security constructions to this evidence-based discussion of the human impact. It also allows to analyze the problem of nuclear weapons, because it's a problem for international community to deal with, in light of other bodies of knowledge, either scientific or legal knowledge. For instance, to analyze the impact of nuclear weapons on international law, the law of the UN Charter on Sustainable Development, on international human rights law, international environmental law, and while recognizing the disproportionate impact of radiation on women, girls, and indigenous populations, it also touches upon the notions of non-discrimination and inherent human dignity, which are fundamentals of the international community. So altogether, for me, it is a treaty, and this part really provides, I would say, a whole of system approach to nuclear weapons, which is actually what moves them from this silo in which, they were put many decades ago as instruments of power.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We are huge fans and so grateful for your personal leadership, and of course also for the leadership of the government of Costa Rica. In this campaign, we really like boundary pushers. We like creative thinkers. We like those who won't say it can't be done, but those that will actually say, I'll find a way. And this is really what we've found in so many brilliant, tenacious diplomats who've helped to turn the nuclear ban treaty from an idea to today international law. And some were there in the initial stage of plotting the treaty. Other came in the point where it was time to secure the ratification. And many diplomats have moved on to other positions today. Diplomats very often work in silence, discreetly operating without much fanfare, much attention, often quite unnoticed by the public. But we know, and we noticed, and I know that sometimes in ICANN we can be really, really annoying, and we always push and nag you to do more. But from the bottom of our hearts, we really want to thank all of the diplomats that have been part of this process for making this happen. And here are some of your voices.
Antigua and Barbuda.
Austria.
People's Republic of Bangladesh.
Republic of Benin.
Bolivia.
Costa Rica.
Republic of Cuba.
Ecuador.
El Salvador.
Guyana.
The Holy See.
Honduras.
Jamaica. Kazakhstan.
Kingdom of Lesotho. Rhodesia.
Malta.
Mexico. Republic of Namibia. Nicaragua. The Federal Republic of Nigeria.
New Zealand.
State of Palestine.
State of Palestine. Panama.
República del Paraguay.
Republic of South Africa.
St. Kitts and Nevis. Thailand. Trinidad and Tobago.
Vietnam.
Thank you very much. It was very, very nice to see all of your faces again. And we can't wait to meet you all in person soon. And it's my pleasure now to welcome another guest. And we're going to try the Zoom thing again, see if it works. Ambassador Seko from South Africa. Are you? Hi. I don't think I have sound. Yeah, we do have sound. Can you unmute the mic? Maybe you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Is it working?
Hi.
Yeah. So we're going to try to find something. And Ambassador Seko was the head of the South African delegation throughout the negotiations. And have been a really sort of a key person in the disarmament community here in Geneva. Ambassador, now South Africa is really the only country that's had nuclear weapons and decided to give them up. Can you tell me a little bit more about why?
Can you hear me, Beatrice? Am I coming through? Is there sound?
Yeah, it's working.
You can hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes. For South Africa, this was an issue that was woven into the vision of South Africa that we wanted in the struggle against apartheid. We knew that we wanted to have a peaceful region because apartheid had destabilized our region. At the center of that was the threat of nuclear weapons. But you also have to remember that globally, the other side of the global anti-apartheid movement was the campaign for nuclear disarmament. So it was in the DNA of the African National Congress to denounce nuclear weapons and draw back from the possession of nuclear weapons. So you had figures like Nelson Mandela that were committed to nuclear disarmament at a visceral level. You have also church leaders like Bishop Tutu, who firmly believe that there are no right hands for these weapons that are deadly. So it was part of the vision of the South Africa that we wanted as a country, as a neighbor, and as a global citizen, striving for peace and development in a world where we were rid of weapons of mass destruction.
You know, one of my absolute favorite memories of you, Ambassador, is really at the closing of the failed 2015 NPT review conference. You delivered one of those closing statements that I still remember today. And you talked then about the concept of nuclear apartheid. Can you explain that a little bit? And what did you mean with that?
What we meant was that we believe that the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, was intended to move us towards the ultimate a liquidation of nuclear weapons. It was never intended to lead to a situation of the indefinite possession by some, while the majority have given up, quite rightly, the right to possess these deadly nuclear weapons. So you couldn't have this very perverse kind of apartheid, as it were, where the possessors claim they have the right to determine the fate and the pace at which we disarm. That is totally unacceptable.
Yeah. So, sometimes in this process and about the treaty, we get quite a lot of criticism saying that none of the important countries are on board, meaning mainly like the Western governments. Can you explain a little bit why this issue is really important to countries like South Africa, but also other African, Latin American, Asian countries, and why they showed such a leadership throughout these negotiations?
The issue of nuclear disarmament is really very important for the world. You just have to place it against development. The amount of resources that could be freed for development would be incredible. But the pointlessness of nuclear weapons is proved by the period that we're in now. We're fighting a pandemic. You cannot shoot it or blast it with nuclear weapons. Your nuclear weapons are totally irrelevant. We're all in peril, and we respond to it through collaboration and through different needs. So the majority of the global citizenry is opposed to nuclear weapons because we know that we're in peril for as long as others have us. But at the same time, not only is global peace undermined, but global development is undermined. Bear in mind that global recovery is dependent on development in developing countries. If you free resources from nuclear weapons and other weapons, you make it possible for us to be prepared for things such as the current pandemic that we are going through. A question has been raised about the non-participation of nuclear weapon states in this process. And I remind people that they always have to be dragged kicking and screaming in this process. They always have to. They don't always come willingly in this process, including with the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Not all of them were part of the NPT initially, but with the growing support of the NPT, all of them have folded into this. So we should just continue to do the work that needs to be done in these countries, mobilizing civil society to make sure that they actually lean on their governments to become part and parcel of the TPNW. And this is where, for me, the role of ICANN is so fundamental. I'm really very grateful to you for the amount of work that you've done, working in a very delicate way to carry countries and move them into a place where they're clear and they can ratify in a context where there's been so much intimidation. So I'm really glad that the Nobel Prize, the Nobel Committee, Peace Committee, felt the need to identify ICANN as the best suited organization to carry the work forward. Of course, this is only just the beginning. We need more. We need more, especially in developed countries. Bear in mind that in Africa, we're in a nuclear weapon-free zone. So underneath the TPNW, we're also firmly grounded in the Pelindaba Treaty. We must not rest until we get more and more drawing the link between the NPT and the TPNW. They are symbiotically connected. They are inextricably linked. They go together. Article 6 is given content by the TPNW, which covers also a whole range of things, as Ambassador Elaine was saying, in terms of human rights and in terms of gender issues, which are very current as it were. So I take my hat off to ICANN, and I hope to continue contributing somewhat this area, because that's where I cut my teeth as a young diplomat in nuclear disarmament.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Ambassador. It was such a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm sure we'll see you soon again. And we are now going to head over to another champion state, And I'm going to pass the word over to my colleague Nadia Schmidt from ICANN Austria in Vienna. Nadia, over to you.
Thank you, Beatrice, and hello and welcome from Vienna. My name is Nadia Schmidt, and I'm the director of ICANN Austria. I'm now in the Austrian Federal Ministry for European and International Affairs, and I'm very proud to be able to present to you tonight the Austrian Foreign Minister, Mr. Alexander Schallenberg.
Hello, good evening.
Hello and
welcome in the ministry.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this opportunity. And it's wonderful to have you here tonight at our ICANN show.
It's a pleasure and an honor.
So my first question to you is, what does the TPNW mean to Austria?
I believe this treaty is a real game changer, and we are turning a page. This is something we have fought for 75 years actually. Civil society, states, Hibaksha, and so many others. And now for the first time we have actually a legal instrument of international law with the aim of the total elimination of nuclear weapons. And this is something very new. And it proves how much we can achieve if there's a working, functioning PPP, a public-private partnership. And I'm very proud and happy that we as Austria and as Foreign Ministry have been standing shoulder to shoulder with ICANN and others like the International Red Cross. And this is really a success we can all be proud of.
And why do you think is the TPNW such a big thing, even as the nuclear weapon states have not joined yet?
There are two reasons. First of all, we are changing the narrative away from the nuclear protection, the nuclear umbrella, to actually the catastrophic consequences of nuclear weapons. They cannot protect, they can only destroy. And secondly, yes, I agree, many states would like to see to join, haven't joined yet, but I'm optimistic. Let's think about the Ottawa Convention on landmines. Let's think about cluster bombs, chemical weapons, biological weapons. Every time we were told you cannot do that, states who are either producing these weapons or holding them were very reserved and outright negative, but we still did these conventions and treaties, and what did they achieve? A change of narrative, a change of perception, a change of public awareness. And that's what we will achieve, I hope so, and I'm very optimistic, step by step with the TPNW as well. The road ahead of us is still long, but I'm very optimistic. At the very beginning, nobody thought that we will collect 50 states plus to get the ratification and the entry into force. Now we got that, and I think in the next coming years, many other states will join as well.
Today, we are celebrating the entry into force. But what exactly are the next steps of the treaty?
Well, I mean, the aim is clear, the total elimination of nuclear weapons, to have a nuclear weapons-free world. The next target date is the Conference of State Parties, which should take place here in Vienna at the end of this year or beginning of next year, and where we will set the agenda for the coming years and months. And this is an ongoing process, and the goal is obviously to encourage other states to join this treaty, to broaden our public-private partnership, to get other NGOs and civil society on board, because we all know that even in states holding nuclear weapons, there's a very strong public opinion which has doubts about it, because we have seen Chernobyl, we have seen Fukushima. Nobody guarantees that it might not be intentional, but there might be one day an accident, and the consequences would be simply catastrophic.
Thank you so much for your words, and it's very wonderful news that the meeting of states parties is going to take place in Vienna, and I'm personally very looking forward to it, to also be able to welcome the member states and my fellow campaigners here in Vienna. And I'm also very proud that Austria will stay a very active promoter of the TPNW and be one of our champion states also in the future.
And we got a big boost today. I mean, the Secretary General Guterres of the UN said that the elimination of nuclear weapons will be the #1 priority in disarmament of the United Nations. So this is something where we know that we have strong allies around the globe.
Of course, yeah, that's very wonderful to hear. Yeah, I now want to thank you again very much for this opportunity, for your words and for your time. And with that, I want to give back to the studio in Geneva and to Beatrice.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Thank you for Minister Schallenberg. I think I can speak on the behalf of the whole campaign, really, when I say that we are all really excited about the first MSP in Vienna. We can't wait to get there. I'm sure I'm not the only one who desperately misses conferences, campaign meetings, and obviously the post-debrief strategic discussion beers in the evenings. So we're looking forward to Vienna. It's time for us to enjoy a little bit more music. We're going to go back to Oslo and the wonderful Nosiswe, and after that, do bear with us because we're going to have a little very tiny little break where we're just going to have to fix some new presentations for the next segment on the screen. So stay here is some performance by Nosiswe.
Last night I had the strangest dream I'd ever dreamed before. I dreamed the world had all agreed to put an end to war. I dreamed I saw a mighty room, and the room was filled with men, and the papers they were signing said they'd never fight again. And when the papers all were signed and 1,000,000 copies made, they all joined hands and bowed their heads, and grateful prayers were prayed, and the people in the streets were dancing round and around and round and round, and guns and swords and uniforms were scattered on the ground. Last night I had the strangest dream I'd ever dreamed before. I dreamed the world agreed to put an end to war.
seconds.
Okay. Hello, I'm Alicia. I'm ICANN's Policy and Research Coordinator. It's really great to have you all here with us today, virtually. So now I'm going to do a segment walking you through the problem of nuclear weapons today. So starting out, we can see that there are more than 13,000 nuclear weapons in the world. There are 9 countries that have these weapons: the United States, Russia, China, France, the United Kingdom, India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea. And all of these countries have different types of weapons, different arsenals, and they put their weapons all throughout their country. So in this map here, you can see where US nuclear weapons and their delivery systems are stored. So the United States can launch nuclear weapons from missiles, from submarines, and from airplanes. And you can see where there are missile silos across the country, as well as air bases where airplanes that can deliver nuclear weapons are docked, and submarine docks as well, where submarines can be placed, although often they are roaming throughout the country. In the United Kingdom, the UK delivers their nuclear weapons via submarines, which are based in Scotland near Glasgow. In France, France can launch its nuclear weapons from air bases as well as from submarines. And you can see where those bases are and where the submarine docks are in this map of France. And for one more example, we can see in Russia, like the United States, it can launch its nuclear weapons from missiles, from submarines, or from airplanes. And there are silos across the country, as well as multiple airplane bases and submarine docks. So previously, we've already heard about the human costs of nuclear weapons, the catastrophic humanitarian consequences they pose. But what about how much nuclear weapons cost in terms of dollars and cents? Here we can see it's quite a lot. In 2019 alone, the 9 nuclear-armed states spent $72.9 billion on their nuclear arsenals. And what's really sad is how this money could be spent differently to really address real human security needs. We can see here just how one nuclear-armed state, the United States, could have spent this money differently to address the global pandemic. So that's kind of the general overview. Who has nuclear weapons? Where are they in their countries? How much do they cost? But the problem is actually so much bigger than these 9 nuclear-armed states. So I'm glad to invite Richard Lennane, former diplomat, UN disarmament official, and currently an executive in residence at the Geneva Center for Security Policy, to the studio to help answer some questions about who else is contributing to this nuclear weapons problem. So welcome today, Richard. Glad to have you.
Thanks, Alicia. I'm delighted to be here today. It's a wonderful day. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the other countries that are causing problems with nuclear weapons.
Great. Yeah, it's too bad we have kind of the downer segment here. Usually there's all these celebrations, but we've got to talk about the problem first. So, you know, I've talked a lot about these 9 nuclear-armed states so far, but Richard, you know that the problem is bigger than just those countries. So who are the other countries that are involved in this problem?
Right, well, there's a range of countries that do not have nuclear weapons. They are non-nuclear weapon states. They are members of the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So nuclear weapons are in fact already prohibited for them. But these countries depend on nuclear weapons for their security. They're in an alliance with a nuclear weapon state. They're members of NATO, for example. So we're talking about Germany, about the Netherlands, about Norway, about Spain, about Italy. We're also talking about countries like Australia and Canada and Japan.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you well know, there are all these countries that actually host US nuclear weapons. We can see here on this map where actually there are all these nuclear weapons. In some countries, there's actually more US nuclear weapons being hosted than in North Korea, for example. So it's really, really significant.
Well, it's quite extraordinary, I think, that these are countries which for which nuclear weapons are prohibited. These countries are not allowed to possess nuclear weapons by the NPT, and now, of course, also the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. But you can see, there are nuclear weapons in the Netherlands, there are nuclear weapons in Germany, there are nuclear weapons in Turkey. And this is something we really have to bring to the world's attention, and we have to put a stop to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And funny you should mention that, because as we know, there are lots of people who are trying to do just that. And today, especially, there are citizens in all of these countries protesting the weapons that are based there. So I'd like to take a look at one action we had in the Netherlands. And we'll pull that video any minute.
Hi, I'm Susie Snyder, and I'm here at the Vocal Air Base today, where we're gathering because nuclear weapons are here in the Netherlands. And what we're doing is we're letting the people at the base know not only should there be a warning that that the base is off limits, but also that there are nuclear weapons there. So we're attaching these signs. And greetings from the Netherlands, where nuclear weapons are also illegal. Thanks.
So now we know a bit about all the countries that are involved. But what about beyond the countries? Are there other actors, other institutions within these countries that are also contributing to nuclear weapons in some way?
Well, this has been the problem. For all the years that we've had the NPT, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, there's been this idea that nuclear weapons are not completely prohibited, that there are some countries that are allowed to have nuclear weapons. And because of that, there's a whole industry supporting the production and the maintenance of these weapons. There are financial institutions that are investing in these production of these weapons. There are banks, there are pension funds, because they haven't been illegal. And that's very different from the case, for example, with biological weapons or chemical weapons, or even cluster bombs or landmines, where we have very strong international laws. So the banks say, no, we can't invest in that. It's illegal, it's prohibited. We can't put our money there. You have universities conducting research still now on nuclear weapons or technologies to build nuclear weapons. I mean, this is now illegal, and this is a very important factor of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, that it means that the financial institutions, the universities, and so on now have to say, look, these activities are prohibited. We cannot continue to support this. But at the moment, and for the last 50 years, you've had all kinds of financial support for nuclear weapons production, industrial support, big companies making lots of money making nuclear weapons, universities researching nuclear weapons, and it's got to stop.
Absolutely, and I think this is one way that a lot of people who might feel like this is such an abstract issue, this is such an abstract treaty, how does this impact me? This is how they can really relate, because there are a lot of household names that are companies producing parts of nuclear weapons, they're financial institutions investing in those companies, or they're universities that, as you say, are contributing to research. We just have a few up here on the screen.
I mean, as you say, household names, and I think about it, this could be your pension fund, your bank that's supporting the production and the maintenance of these weapons. If it was terrorism, if it was biological or chemical weapons, you'd be absolutely appalled. The companies concerned would be prosecuted. That hasn't been the case, but now you can help to make it the case. We can all make it illegal, and we can stop these companies supporting these weapons.
Absolutely, and people are doing just that, protesting this involvement today. Just as one example, I'd like to point to a few different universities that had protests today that are having protests as we speak. So perhaps we have a few photos of those protests that we can pull up here. But essentially, I mean, there are just a number of universities that did have these protests. There nearly 50 universities that are involved in the nuclear weapons complex through partnerships with nuclear weapons laboratories. There were protests today at the University of Arizona. In Knoxville, activists are placing posters containing the text of the treaty at the Nuclear Engineering Building. There also were protests at the University of California, Berkeley, the University of Arkansas, and Johns Hopkins University's Applied Physics Laboratory. So we can really see how there's already action being placed on all these different institutions given their involvement now that we have the treaty that's entered into force. And speaking more about the impact of this treaty and the importance of this kind of multilateral action, earlier today we had the opportunity to interview Berit Reiss-Andersen on the power of the TPNW and multilateralism. And let's go ahead and watch that video now.
Well, sometimes activism is really hard. You sit in long meetings, you get 100 no's before you get a yes. But sometimes it is a lot of fun and quite exciting and glamorous. And that's the moment when you win Nobel Peace Prizes. So I'm really excited here to have with us today the chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee, Berit Reiss-Andersen. Welcome very much, Berit.
Thank you very much, and congratulations with this day.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic accomplishment.
It's really, really nice to have you here, and it's great to see you again. I wanted to jump straight in, and in 2017, the Nobel Committee decided to award ICANN the Nobel Peace Prize. First of all, thank you very much for that. We really, really enjoyed it. And if you look at the motivation of that, the reasoning behind it, it was quite a lot about the treaty. As one of the main reasons why we were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Can you explain a little bit why the Nobel Committee thought that the treaty and ICANN was worthy of this prize?
Yes, I'll be happy to explain that, because it was exactly your activism bringing new vigor into the disarmament movement. And I think it is fair to say it was basically three reasons or three pillars in the reasoning. One was a humanitarian argument that ICANN so strongly stresses that combating nuclear weapons is a humanitarian cause, because a nuclear war can never be won and is devastating to human mankind if nuclear weapons ever are put into use. We have, unfortunately, some experience, and use of nuclear weapons today will be even more devastating than the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So that was one argument, the humanitarian argument. And then there was the legal argument. Because other weapons, not as dangerous as nuclear weapons, have been banned under international legal system. That's, of course, cluster weapons, landmines, and chemical weapons. And it was sort of an obvious issue. Why have we not banned the most dangerous weapon of them all, the nuclear weapons? So there was a legal gap where the initiative of the TPNW was really essential to fill that legal gap. And then thirdly, it was simply from a risk point of view that nuclear weapons are so dangerous. And in 2017, the backdrop for your Peace Prize was several test bombings by North Korea. And the risk hasn't exactly diminished during the 3 years that have passed. The very good effort of the JCPA bilateral agreement is not, after the Americans withdrew from the agreement, it is not a push forward. And it's really working on all these three fronts simultaneously that was our reason for Eichen being the Nobel Peace Prize laureate of 2017.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's really, it's really heartwarming to hear as well, just today when we're celebrating this moment. And, the Nobel Committee very often actually gives the Nobel Peace Prize to disarmament efforts, to international legal effort, to multilateralism, international organizations. And many of these things are things that perhaps are not seen as very sexy in the media, or not very sort of, a lot of people kind of shake their heads and like, oh, it's not effective, it's just talk, and is it ever going to change anything? But the Nobel Committee seems to value these efforts and understand sort of from a longer perspective. Can you talk a little bit about how disarmament and international law, multilateralism, international organizations actually is a credible pathway to a more peaceful world?
Well, our mandate is bound actually in the will of Alfred Nobel. And he set up 3 criteria for letting us award somebody with a Nobel Peace Prize. And it is the criteria of fraternity between nations. That is a criteria that have been used for the more humanitarian and freedom prizes that we have awarded. And it was the criteria of reduction of standing armies, which is the disarmament criteria. And where we have a long line of disarmament prizes, some I have already mentioned, that cluster weapons, chemical weapons, landmines, nuclear weapons on several occasions have been awarded with that kind of disarmament work has been awarded with peace prizes. And the third criterion, Alfred Nobel's will, is contributions to peace congresses, which was in mode in the 1880s. But really, we have throughout the years interpreted as exactly international law and order and institutions. So these 3 criteria actually form a kind of universe of international order, international legal order. One of the first recipients of the Peace Prize was the International Red Cross, Henri Dunant. So international law and order, multilateralism definitely belongs to the Nobel universe, and disarmament. And we, with Alfred Nobel, really believe that these movements are the most central efforts to create peace in the world today as 120 years ago.
Thank you very much. It's really great to see you, Berit. Thank you so much for that. So to everyone listening, if you want a Nobel Peace Prize, I think disarmament, international law, diplomacy, multilateralism is a really good bet to do that.
Exactly.
Thank you very much,
good
Berit.
Encouragement.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Berit. So these issues are not only popular with the Nobel Committee, they're also really popular with public opinion. And we have just polled a number of European governments, and here are the results.
Goedendag, ik ben Fabian and the poll results are in. 78% of the Dutch people want to join the nuclear ban treaty.
Buongiorno, I'm Daniele and the Italian poll results are in. In Italy, 87% of people want to join the Treaty on Prohibition on Nuclear Weapons. Italia, ripensaci.
Hello, I'm Palle Benson from Denmark. In Denmark, 78% think that Denmark should join the ban treaty.
Góðan daginn. I am Stefan from Reykjavik, and here are the results of the Icelandic jury. 86% of Icelanders want to join the treaty to ban nuclear weapons?
Dia, good morning. This is Carmen from Barcelona, a member of Fundipau. The poll shows that 89% of Spanish people want Spain to join the nuclear ban treaty.
Hello, bonjour. This is Merel from Brussels, coming in with some new poll results. 77% of Belgians want our government to join the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons.
Well, quite interesting numbers there, don't you think, Daniel?
Numbers show is a trend that we've seen over the last several years in these polls and in previous polls, which show that governments that are complicit in nuclear weapons, the governments that Richard and Alicia were talking about earlier, are doing so. They're continuing these arrangements against the will of their people. And this democratic deficit is even more stark if you consider that in the countries that actually host nuclear weapons, Belgium, Netherlands, in Europe, I mean, Belgium, Netherlands, Italy, and Germany, a lot of people, a significant proportion of the people in those countries don't actually know that nuclear weapons are on their territory. And that's because those nuclear weapons were brought in secretly without any kind of public consultation.
Yeah, there was no parliamentary decisions, there was no sort of democratic decisions behind that, right?
Absolutely.
So you could really say that nuclear weapons are kind of, especially the nuclear weapons in Europe, are very anti-democratic.
Absolutely. And you know, the thing is that when the public do find out, this data shows is that they want those nuclear weapons gone.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit more about the data? Like what's new here? We've commissioned some polls. Where can people find these numbers and exactly the breakdown of these numbers?
Absolutely. So you can check out these numbers. I mean, first of all, it's really exciting to see the news that they've made all over the world. Front page news in Iceland. I think that's huge. I love that.
Yeah. That's because you were on the front page.
I didn't want to say that, but if you're going to bring it up. No, but you can check it out on the ICANN webpage. Check it out there. We've got the polls, the whole listing there, and the methodology for those of you who are interested in that kind of thing.
So when NATO headquarters says that NATO countries do not support this, we know that that's not actually the truth, right?
Absolutely. I mean, these countries, they can follow the NATO line if they want to, or if they can do the more politically expedient thing actually, which is follow the will of their populations.
And in line with democracy.
Yeah.
So how do we then go from this public support into kind of creating that political change?
Well, when the public demands change, that's when politicians come into play. And now we're actually going to hear from some lawmakers who are actively involved in this issue. First up, I want to turn to Representative Jim McGovern of Massachusetts. Let's hear what he had to say about the TPNW entering into force.
I'm Congressman Jim McGovern from Massachusetts, and I'm so happy to be with you today, January 22nd, when the International Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons comes into force. This day marks the culmination of decades of work by millions of people all around the world. But to make the promise of this international treaty a reality will require us to redouble our efforts. The world is on the edge of entering a new nuclear arms race with modernized weapons in development by traditional nuclear powers and new nations working feverishly to develop their own nuclear arsenals. We must reverse direction and recognize not only the need to reduce the number of nuclear weapons in the world, but to eliminate them once and for all time. It won't be easy, but then it never has been. The Nuclear Ban Treaty gives us a new opportunity to rapidly move forward towards this goal, a world free of nuclear weapons. The work of the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons has helped galvanize support for this treaty. They are joined by hundreds of religious, academic, labor, women's, student, civil society, peace, disarmament, and arms control groups here in the United States and all around the globe. Thank you for all that you have achieved. I look forward to working with you in the days and the weeks ahead to build a world free from the threat of nuclear weapons and nuclear war. Together we can create a nuclear-free future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. So crossing the Atlantic to another nuclear weapon state, I'm very fortunate to be joined here by Caroline Lucas, a Member of Parliament from the UK Green Party. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Well, thank you. It's a real honor to be with you on such a momentous occasion. It's very exciting.
So, Caroline, I know that this is an issue that is very near and dear to you. You've been a nuclear disarmament advocate for a very long time. Tell us how you're feeling and why this is such an important issue for you.
Well, at a time when so much in the world feels like it's pretty grim, this, I think, is a beacon of light showing the way forward, because this demonstrates that when countries really believe in something, when individuals, organizations like ICANN really believe in something, then you can make progress. And to me, the nuclear weapons crisis has never gone away. It was the thing that got me into politics nearly 40 years ago. The idea that we could willingly contemplate the idea of destroying millions of people and much of the planet many times over is just so obscene. And even more so today, in a sense, given that there are so many other calls on where we should be putting our finances, where we should be recognizing the risks come from. I'm thinking of things like the climate risk. The idea that governments are still seeking to acquire and to accumulate more and more nuclear weapons just seems absolutely unacceptable. And what I think is so exciting about the nuclear prohibition ban is that it really is about countries coming together to say we can do things differently. And today, the day when it's properly entering into force is a really exciting day.
Yeah, thank you so much. So a lot of the viewers here are they're wondering about how to practically get engaged and how to practically work on this issue. As a member of the ICANN Parliamentary Pledge, first of all, what role can parliamentarians play in the success of the TPNW, and how can ordinary citizens engage with parliamentarians?
I think that's a really good question, particularly, for example, here in the UK, where our own government has resolutely refused to engage with any of this process at all. I was horrified that they didn't even turn up at the UN process. They didn't even turn up as observers. You know, when we ask our government about nuclear disarmament, they always say, well, we won't do it unilaterally, but we will do it multilaterally. Well, here is a perfect multilateral forum for which they could demonstrate their commitment. And again, they're turning their back on it. And it is up to parliamentarians to hold their feet to the fire, to ask the difficult questions, to remind them on every opportunity, to get the debates in Parliament, to sign the motions, and to make sure that they cannot hide from this issue. Here in the UK, there's been a new poll that's just been announced that shows that 77% of people, I've just got the poll here, support a total ban on nuclear weapons. That's 77% of the UK public. You'd never guess that from looking at the government's position. So I think it's so important both that parliamentarians use every democratic channel that's open to us to keep pressure on government and say, you are not acting in line with public wishes, but also to keep the light alive, if you like, amongst people right around the country, all those very many people who desperately want to see an end to this obscene waste of money, this costly distraction from the real threats that we face today. And I think to the extent that parliamentarians can be engaging regularly with groups in our constituencies who passionately believe in the cause of disarmament, to help them keep that light alive, to make sure that they know that there are representatives in Parliament who are standing up for what they believe in, that I think can help deliver the kind of the momentum and the sustained action that is going to be required to mean that, you know, even a country like the UK gets involved in this process. Because I think the fact that so many countries are backing it really does help to make the concept of getting rid of nuclear weapons much more normal. We already react in horror with the idea of chemical warfare or biological warfare or landmines or cluster munitions. All of these things, public pressure managed to get rid of. And now it's the turn of nuclear weapons. And we were successful in those other campaigns, and we will be successful in this one. And the fact that we now have this TPNW absolutely gives us the next step in that process.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. The UK obviously is a nuclear weapons state, and a lot of people do think that nuclear weapons keep us safe. So just very, very quickly, as a British politician, why do you think nuclear disarmament is in the UK's interest?
I think that the position that we currently hold, which is to say that some nations, including the UK, are allowed to keep nuclear weapons and others, take Iran, for example, are not, is a totally incoherent position and a very hypocritical position. We cannot possibly lecture the rest of the world about disarming if we ourselves are not only keeping our arms, but actually seeking to upgrade our Trident nuclear weapons. So essentially the choice before us is this: do we want to advocate for a world where every single country has nuclear weapons? Because that's the logical consequence of the UK position. If the UK is really saying that nuclear weapons are essential for our security, then they cannot possibly deny the right of other countries to acquire nuclear weapons too. So the logical consequence of our position right now, of our government's position right now, is for a totally nuclear armed world. And if anybody thinks that that's going to make us safer, then they're not paying attention, basically. So I think our position is utterly untenable. And the only way forward, the only way to make us safe, is to start to disarm ourselves of nuclear weapons. And that would have us have an awful lot more moral authority in making that case to other countries too. And that's even before we've got into the debate about the accidents that regularly happen, the near misses that have happened on several occasions. We are lucky to have got to this stage without worse happening. Let's not try and take our luck any further.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Perfectly said there. Well, congratulations so much also to you. You've been a true friend of the TPNW over the years, so congratulations to you as well for this moment.
Well, thank you, and big congratulations to you and to everything that you've.
So now from the national level to the more local level, cities and towns have been at the forefront historically in championing many issues that matter to people. We've seen it with the response to the climate emergency, and of course we've seen many inspiring examples in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And now we're also seeing cities and towns rising up in support of the TPNW. Let's take a look at some examples of the cities that have signed the ICANN Cities Appeal.
As you could probably see, they're glimpsing one of the key landmarks from Geneva, the Jet d'Eau. And ICANN, with our office here, we're really proud residents of Geneva, this truly international and progressive city. And it's a great pleasure for me to introduce here with us tonight the mayor of Geneva, Sami Kanan. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, and we're so pleased to have you in Geneva.
Yes. So Geneva signed the ICANN Cities Appeal in 2019, but of course Geneva has a really long history of supporting humanitarian causes. We're known here in Geneva for the home of United Nations, international peace negotiations, of course WATCHES as well. But how does Geneva see its role in the world, and what kind of values does it seek to promote?
We definitely try to promote values about human rights, tolerance, diversity, also sustainable development. We are a small city, but we're a very known city. And since, as you said, we're the seat of many international organizations, a lot of international multilateral negotiation, we have increased responsibility to take our own responsibility in this field and to give a good example.
And I find that quite interesting because sometimes when we work on cities, we get the question from people like, why would a city involve in international issues, that local thing? Like, why would you get involved in foreign policy? Can you explain a little bit why it's important for a city to look beyond just sort of being a city and its role in the world stage?
It's crucial, especially for nuclear weapons. We know that the main targets are cities, could still be cities in case of a dramatic development. So that's the first reason we have to protect our population and make our population aware of the risk, and so engage collectively, which makes us very strong. Most of the population of the Earth is now living in cities, so our voice has to be heard, but also because we are close to day-to-day reality of people. We are at the end of the institutions. I mean, we don't make laws, we don't have weapons, but we experience the day-to-day reality and really have to engage in concrete issues like climate change, migration, social equality, gender issues, because we live it in daily life.
And we've found that in our campaigning that people feel so much more closer to their city than their federal government, right? Like the big government, you know, it's where their kids go to school, it's the hospitals they go to when they get sick. So for them, it's like a personal connection there that I think is really important to use.
Absolutely, and we even saw it now in the coronavirus crisis. I mean, we don't make the health rules, but we're at the forefront of reality. I mean, when small business get in trouble, when people get, also in trouble, and we have to support them.
So why did the city of Geneva feel like it was important to join the ICANN Cities Appeal, and together with most cities really in Switzerland now, and calling on the Swiss government to join the TPNW?
I think cities can really make the example, contribute to the debate. It's a very powerful message. We just saw the video, major cities across the world, all continents, and this is a very powerful message which governments sometimes not comfortable, but they have to listen to it. And especially in Switzerland, I mean, the parliament has expressed a clear opinion that Switzerland should now also ratify the treaty. And we're still waiting for the Federal Council, but I guess they will do it now. There is no reason to wait furthermore.
That's what we think as well. Thank you very much, Mayor. It was really great to have you here, and we look forward to working with you, of course, and your colleagues. And I'm going to hand over to Daniel now.
Thank you so much, Bia, and thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. It's an honor to have you here with us. So now at this point of the show, we've gone along a bit. It's how long are we? About an hour and a half through the show. I've lost track in all the excitement and the fun. But I want to take a moment and acknowledge some of the true heroes of this movement, the true heroes of ICANN. And of course, that is the partner organizations, that is campaigners and activists like you. Many of you are watching here today. You know, you're scrappy, you're dynamic, you're energetic, you're creative, especially in difficult times when normal campaigning isn't possible anymore. And it's really, frankly, incredible to see. Today, there are over 150 actions taking place. Some of them have already taken place, like you've seen, and some have yet to take place, time zones and all that. Over 150 actions. That's incredible. There's no way I'm going to be able to read and to give proper acknowledgement to all those activities now. It's just not possible. If I can be perfectly honest, it's been a deluge of getting all your photos and videos. We were really hoping to be able to feature a lot of them. Been frankly overwhelmed by it. But I do want to mention just a few that I've seen come in. Of course, there's lots of webinars with really fascinating speakers. Bell ringing in Brighton. I like the alliteration of that, so I'm going to mention that. New York alone. Wow. Marches. The illumination of the United Nations. That was pretty cool. And did you know that today is ICANN Day in Manhattan? Not bad. Congratulations to campaigners in New York for that. A place that's obviously very close to ICANN's heart, Oslo. There was a rally outside of the parliament that was very, very special, featuring a former prime minister and another mayor, the mayor of Oslo, who's also a champion of the TPNW. There was a really cool light show, actually a couple light shows that I saw in Spain and in Denmark. An amazing, and you have to see this, an amazing dance performance from the city of Trier, the dance ensemble of the city of Trier. Really, really inspiring. Please check that out. Many of you took the fight to the producers themselves, like we also heard about earlier from Richard and Alicia. We saw actions at L3 Harris, by nuclearban.us. We saw a rally at the headquarters of Huntington Ingalls. We saw protests at Volkel. You saw that already. Protests at the Getty base in Italy. Countless things. Vigils, protests, rallies, webinars. It's been really inspiring and creative to see it. So like I said, I can't do justice to all the amazing activities that have taken place across the world. But what I will say is please keep sending in your videos and your photos. Keep putting them up on social media, of course, using the hashtags that Lucero referred to earlier, hashtag nuclear ban. You know it well by now. And we're going to try to celebrate that next week as much as we can, to make sure that you all get your proper due, because it's really been a very special day for campaigners and activists across the world. Another area that campaigners have been active on is, of course, divestment. Past precedent shows that treaties do have an impact on the choices that the financial sectors make, the investments that banks, pension funds, what they choose to have in their portfolios. And we're going to hear now from a champion of that community, a financial institution that is doing the right thing and leading the way. And that's Leslie Samuel-Rich of Green Century Capital Management.
Hello, my name is Leslie Samuel-Rich, President of Green Century Capital Management, the first U.S. institution to be recognized by ICANN as a Hall of Fame financial institution. Although I believe responsible investors already should have been spurning nuclear weapons, I'm confident that the new UN nuclear ban treaty will put this imperative in stark relief, and I hope other mainstream investors recognize it too. After all, the world has spoken. No more nuclear weapons. Green Century Capital Management is proud to avoid industries that threaten the global sustainable economy. And I hope other mainstream investors heed this clarion call to join us.
So, Daniel, I think that one of the most inspiring things that I think about when I hear all these things and see the cities, see the parliaments, see the divestment stuff, is really how creative our partner organizations have become over the years to kind of find new ways to approach this issue. I mean, I think a lot of us have, run up into governments and we hit kind of a wall and they say no, and instead of just standing there and repeating that question, it's like thinking sort of, okay, who else can I convince, and who else can which other angle can I approach this thing from?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, campaigners have to be scrappy, they have to be dynamic. The struggle for resources is something that's not easy, We in civil society know that very well. And we have to, and we've heard from some great champions of this, we have to build a broader coalition of actors that are involved with this. Cities, parliamentarians, financial institutions, many others. There's a plethora of other actors that we need to get involved in this.
And to me, that's really one of the advantages also with working on, creating this new norm, is that it doesn't have to be reliant on a certain actor. Like, everyone can contribute to a norm, right? And that means that also everything you do can be meaningful.
Yeah, that's the super cool thing about international law, right? Yeah. It's like we think that, oh no, it's just something for the textbooks, it's something for the law students to deal with. And no, it's not. Actually, creating a norm, building a norm is something that we create. It doesn't happen on its own.
And I think like that on sort of things like social media, people that, follow ICANN, for example, and, well, I don't do anything. I just kind of retweet you or like sign this petition here and there. But all of that thing is norm building. Like all of that thing, all of those actions is sort of contributing to raising awareness and spreading. Like every single person that discovers a treaty, like helps it become stronger.
Absolutely. I mean, that's super exciting. And that activity is going to be crucial this year because we've got a whole host of elections coming up in really crucial states, states that are currently legitimating nuclear weapons, but states that are also feeling the pressure from the TPNW already. Just a few off the top of my head. We've got Germany, we've got the Netherlands, we've got Japan, we've got Norway, we've got Iceland. Yeah. These are all important countries, and they're all under a lot of pressure from the TPNW. We've already started to see it.
Yeah, and in all of these countries, right, politicians will walk around to their people and say, vote for me. Please, give me your vote. And I think that's where we have a moment to really... What are you going to do on the TPNW? Huh? What are you going to do for me? And to really utilize this year. And I think that with the treaty entering into force now, we have an incredible momentum. And we saw that in the polls earlier. Yeah. We have an incredible momentum in these countries, even no matter what the government says, right? Like they will always say no until they say yes. So I think that there's can be some really exciting development this year.
Absolutely. I mean, they want to hide behind the simple argument that, well, they've got it difficult, right? Because they're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to say, no, we're in favor of a nuclear weapons-free world. At the same time as saying, no, we can't do it because NATO or because, XYZ.
Because we want to keep nuclear weapons.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's about, right?
Yeah.
And so, but the TPNW finally puts that question to them very hard. Yes or no? And we see that when politicians are faced with that question, they say some strange things because it's a hard thing to balance in their minds.
So, to all campaigners and partner organizations out there, we're so excited to see you really taking this campaign to the next level this year. And we're going to go and, when we talked about this sort of incredible diverse community that we have as well, and the different kind of ways people are working is one of the real, fundamental things about ICANN that makes this campaign so powerful. So we're going to go and look at a video with some of our great campaigners and different activists right now.
Hello, I am Agathe from Senegal, but based in Nairobi, Kenya. Talking about nuclear weapons in Africa is both challenging and exciting. Challenging because some people think that it is not Africa matters, and there are so many priorities in Africa. And exciting because as the young people, I'm contributing to shape a better future and to consolidate toward peace. Nuclear weapons are the most destructive weapons and destructive to human life, but also to nature. And it's everyone's responsibility because they don't see who you are, where you are, or whatever you do. And as a young person, I have to take part on this campaign to lead by example, but also to inspire my generation.
Between 2014 and 2016, when we were traveling around the country to talk about the humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons, most people were not aware of what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. However, they all show concern and empathy about the existence of these weapons, and they all came to the same conclusion. What happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki must never happen again.
There is one bright spot to kick off the year. Through the activism of ICANN, the International Peace Bureau, civil society and trade unions, we can actually see that the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons will now come into force. That is a moment to celebrate. But we have work to do. Every government must ratify this treaty. We are in total opposition to weapons of mass destruction and to the money that's spent on this threat to human beings.
The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons that comes into force today is a roadmap to eliminating these weapons for good. It represents the will of our international community to live free of fear and shows what we can achieve through peaceful diplomacy. Today is also a day to pause and to thank those whose lives have been irreversibly impacted by nuclear weapons and nuclear testing, and yet they have turned their tragedy into a struggle for the sake of the greater good. We are all in debt to you. Thank you. I want to congratulate the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons. We are honored to be part of your coalition. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for continuing to inspire us as campaigners. This year marks Greenpeace's 50th anniversary. 50 years ago, in 1971, a small group of activists set sail to the island of Amchitka to try and stop a nuclear test from taking place. We at Greenpeace could not be more delighted that in the anniversary year of our founding journey, we can join the celebration to mark this historic treaty to ban nuclear weapons coming into force. And yet we know there is much work to be done. We cannot have letting weapons of mass destruction be what defines security for people on the planet we call home. We must all unite around this treaty and demand that all governments worldwide sign and ratify it to move us forward on the path to a green and peaceful planet.
I learned about the haunting stories of the hibakushas many years ago
It was horrifying to see how nuclear weapons robbed them of their right to live and their dignity violated. And that is why we in Soka Gakkai Malaysia promote disarmament education, especially among the young. As agents of change and leaders of tomorrow, youth have the capacity to create a new culture of peace. So we were overjoyed when Malaysia ratified the treaty last year, thereby contributing to its entry into force. And it shows that regardless, we all can make a difference. But this is just a new beginning.
It is really nice to see so many people again, and I really hope that you have enjoyed this show. We're in our last final part, and before we go into the next final part, I need you all to do me a favor. I mean, ICANN is really known for our sort of big parties that we also always throw, and that's obviously been a bit of a challenge this year. So at the end, we want to do a toast with all of you. So I just want you now to prepare and to make sure to go and get a drink. And I know that we are in all these different time zones. In Australia, it's Saturday morning, you probably have coffee. Here in Geneva, it's late Friday night, we're running a bit over time. It's definitely time for some, Friday night wine. If you're in the US, it's probably Friday afternoon. I think, it's a day that you can open a beer again. So grab a drink. To make sure that you're ready for our toast at the end. And now it's really my great honor to hand over to a very good friend, a fantastic campaigner, and one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. We are so pleased to have Setsuko Thurlov with us here today, and she's being interviewed. She did this interview with Kathleen Sullivan earlier. So let's head over to Kathleen and Setsuko.
Setsuko, it's so exciting to be with you today when the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons enters into force. Hooray!
Yes, it's wonderful. We have waited for this for a long, long time, 75 years. Finally, the time has come. And today, the nuclear weapons are banned and illegal. Wow. Still cannot fully comprehend this, really.
I'd just like to say on behalf of all of the hundreds of thousands of people across the world that you have personally inspired to work for the total elimination of nuclear weapons, that it is such an honor to be able to hear from you on this day. You've been involved with the before the treaty was negotiated, the humanitarian consequences conferences. You were involved in the treaty negotiations. Just tell us, just give us a feeling of how you're feeling right now. What words would you like to share with those around the world that are listening in?
I can't simply find the words, the right words to express my thoughts. I am certainly so overjoyed. And at the same time, I'm most grateful to all those people who worked with us, the people around us, the people around the world, the people I have not met in person, but we have worked together. And I always remember at a time like this, whenever we have special moments of, shall I say, victory or accomplishment, I always think of the people who paid such a high price for this. I'm thinking of hundreds of thousands of people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki and who lost their lives. They paid so much for this. And we made a vow that we'll make sure their death will not be in vain. We'll make it significant. And I think that significant time has come. And they have always guided us. And their spirit have always inspired me and driven me to this day. And I intend to continue this until we reach the final goal. That is the total elimination of nuclear weapons. Anyway, I simply cannot express my emotion. It's all mixed. And so, joy, gratitude, and once again, I want to say to all my friends in ICANN, or outside of ICANN, the like-minded friends who work together with me, thank you for letting me be a part of this campaign. I got so much from this experience of working with you. And really, you have no idea how much I have gained. My life has been enriched. My life with the people of the ICANN campaign has brought me so many special moments of joy. My first contact with ICANN was when I participated in the inaugural conference here in Canada, in the Parliament building in Ottawa. They had a special meeting and they kindly invited me to speak to them at this occasion. And at that time, little did I know that smallish group can so rapidly grow and develop around the world. It became such a powerful, huge organization which achieved so much. Well, maybe I sounded repetitious, but really I can't thank you enough, all of you. When I say you, the campaigners in the ICANN and a lot of diplomats I met, I feel I made many friends. Oh, that's wonderful. The government representative in ICANN, the citizens, worked hand in hand together.
I want to thank you on behalf of the hundreds of thousands of people that you have inspired to work for nuclear disarmament, that you have inspired with your story of how you survived, that you have inspired us with your conviction to keep going, to keep pushing, to keep moving towards the light, as you said in your Nobel lecture. And, you know, not only your activism and your commitment, but your sense of joy, your sense of love for us all, your humanity, Setsuko. You are such an extraordinary human being and teacher for us. And thank you for everything that you have brought our campaign and how you've inspired us all to be committed to our work, to take joy, and to express our gratitude for one another as we do this work together.
Thank you very much, Setsuko. It's always so great and so inspiring to hear you talk. And fun fact, I don't know if you all know, but it's actually Kathleen's birthday today. Imagine having the birthday today. It's pretty cool, the present that she got from the whole world. So happy birthday, Kathleen. So, you know, talked a little bit about celebrating. You know, it's been ICANN's thing, not just because we like parties, right? But also because, you know, it's so important to celebrate the win you get in this field, because it is such hard work and it is so draining at moments and you feel really down. So celebration has really been part of our strategy since day one, to really appreciate every victory, even if it's small. So I hope you have your glasses ready. I think we're going to do a toast. And it feels a little bit silly to do a toast alone, and you don't really know who's on the other side. So can you take some selfies and post on social media and send to us so we feel like you were actually there when we toasted? It makes us feel like we had a party together. But what an amazing achievement we have done here. Not just ICANN, but governments and international organizations, and everyone has been involved. So cheers. Skål. Skål, som vi säger på svenska. Cheers. Good. Now send us your photos from this. I want to see them. Here we are. We got it. There's quite a few times where in the statement "this changes everything" actually applies, but I think this is really one of them. The Treaty on the Prohibition has entered into force. Nuclear weapons are banned. This changes everything. And I just have a bit of a message to people watching this, in particular perhaps those that not always like us so much. If you think what ICANN has achieved up until now, just wait, because I think we're just getting started. At this moment in the campaign, I don't think ICANN has ever been stronger. We've never had more partner organizations. We've never had so much strong support from other actors, so many partners in this work. So I just really want to say to the nuclear armed states, to the nuclear allies, you're in real trouble right now because we're coming for you. Today is really, really a great day. And I think tomorrow is going to be even better. So I want to thank everyone for joining us here tonight. Thank you for giving so much and giving up so much time that you have on this work. I feel like, sometimes you do this work and you wonder, does it actually matter? But it is seen, it is meaningful, and it has changed the world. I mean, today is really a testament to that. We are changing everything. And today, nuclear weapons are illegal. And for that, to each of one of you at home, I simply say thank you and good night from Geneva.